Okay, picture this. It's 2013. You're at the top of Apple, you're the most valuable company in the world, and you have, get this, $145 billion cash in the bank.
Just sitting there.
Yeah.
An incredible amount of money.
More than you could ever spend. So here's a riddle. Why on earth would you go out and borrow another $17 billion?
Yeah, it breaks your brain a little, right?
Yeah.
The logical first thought is, okay, a huge new factory. Maybe they're buying a competitor.
Or some top secret R&D project. You assume it's for making something new, for growth.
But it wasn't.
Not even close. That debt was used for stock buybacks and for dividends.
Which is a perfect example of what people call financial engineering. Apple didn't need that money to build a better iPhone. They were using cheap debt to buy their own stock and, artificially boost the share price.
And that one story is the perfect doorway into our deep dive today. We're getting into Rana Foroohar's book, Makers and Takers.
Mm-hmm. And her whole argument is that the takers, basically the finance sector, have hijacked the makers, which is, the real economy that actually builds things.
She calls it financialization. It's this huge shift where the whole point of the economy moves from creating value to just capturing it. And the scary part is that this isn't just about Wall Street getting rich. The argument is it's actually strangling innovation.
Yeah, it creates what she calls the rise of the bean counters over the product people. I think the most damning example in the book has to be General Motors.
Oh, right.
You can see this clear cultural shift.
Got that.
The car guys, the engineers who loved cars, they completely lost control to the finance guys.
And you can trace that all the way back, right, to Robert McNamara and the whiz kids at Ford. They brought in this philosophy that if you can measure it, you can manage it.
Which, sounds smart on paper. But it becomes a problem when finance is the only thing that matters. At GM, this obsession with the balance sheet, it led directly to the ignition switch crisis.
That was the tragedy, the one where a faulty switch could just shut the engine off while you were driving. No power, no airbags. And the engineers knew about it.
They knew. And the fix cost something like 57 cents a car.
57 cents, wow.
Exactly. But in a culture that was obsessed with cost cutting, that 57 cents was seen as too expensive compared to the, calculated risk of lawsuits down the line. This is where Foroohar talks about the GM nod.
This part of the book is like a corporate horror story.
It is. Executives would sit in a meeting, they'd nod and agree that, yes, this safety issue needs fixing, and then they'd just leave the room and do nothing.
Because they knew the only thing their bosses actually cared about were the financial targets.
Spreadsheets were literally driving the car. But okay, if GM is about negligence, the story of the aluminum shuffle is just straight-up manipulation. This gets us into rent-seeking.
Which is just a fancy term for making the pie bigger for yourself without actually, baking a bigger pie for everyone.
Perfect way to put it. The book talks about how Goldman Sachs bought up a bunch of aluminum warehouses in Detroit. Now, a bank owning aluminum warehouses, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Unless you're playing some kind of game.
Exactly. They weren't using the metal. They weren't making anything. They were just shuffling it, literally moving pallets of aluminum from one warehouse they owned to another one down the street.
They created a bottleneck on purpose.
Yes. By delaying the delivery of the metal, they inflated the storage times and then charged rent for every single extra day. It just sat there. It was pure monetized inefficiency.
And that has a ripple effect. It actually raised the global price of aluminum, which means the can of Coke you're holding might have cost a tiny bit more because of this game.
That is the taker model in a nutshell. They extracted profit without adding a single ounce of value. But honestly, the impact on consumer goods is one thing. The impact this has on science is it's terrifying.
Okay, this was the part that really stuck with me. The story about Andrew Lo. He's an MIT professor, and his mother was battling cancer, and he starts looking into why some drugs get funding and others just don't.
And he asks this biotech executive, how much does financing influence your scientific agenda? The guy just laughs at him. He says, influence, finance drives our research agenda.
That's chilling. That is the danger of short-term thinking. A potential cure that takes, say, 10 years to develop. That looks terrible on a quarterly earnings report.
So if the ROI timeline doesn't fit the financial model, the research just gets shelved. We are not prioritizing the science that saves the most lives. We're prioritizing the science that offers the fastest return on investment.
So if we zoom out, what are we looking at? We've got a finance sector that's only, 7% of the economy. It creates only 4% of the jobs.
Yet it takes home about 25% of all corporate profits. That is a massive imbalance. It feels like the tail is wagging the dog.
So what's the big takeaway? We can't just get rid of the financial system.
No, of course not. But we need to rethink its role.
Yeah.
The idea is to treat finance more like a utility, like electricity. It's essential to power the economy, but you don't want the electric company designing your toaster.
That's a great way to think about it. Finance should be serving business, not the other way around.
Exactly. So here's a challenge for you to think about. Next time you look at a company, maybe you're thinking of investing or even applying for a job there, ask yourself, are they practicing this kind of financial alchemy, just buying back stock to pump the price? Or are they actually making something real?
A really important question for all of us, and that's our deep dive into makers and takers. Thanks for joining us.